Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, and we are live. Um, we've talked about racism being declared as a public health issue before. The CDC has named it as a public health issue. I think it was last year. We know a number of cities have done this as well over the past couple of years. And the coronavirus pandemic has exposed structural inequities based upon race that exist in society. We know since 2019, you've had dozens of cities around the country that have declared racism a public health issue, starting with Milwaukee County in Wisconsin in 2019. Okay, most recently, the city of New York City has declared racism as a public health issue. And we know that New York City is the largest city in the country. All right. New York Times has a big article about this as well. I saw a good piece from New York channel. I think it's New York Channel 4, NBC New York. They have a good story on this as well. Okay. Racism is declared a public health crisis in New York City. Racism is declared a public health crisis in New York City. The New York City Board of Health passed a resolution on Monday, October 18th, declaring racism a public health crisis and requesting that the city's health department expand its work to promote anti-racism. And requesting that the city's health department expand its works to promote anti-racism. In particular, the board noted the impact that racism had on health throughout the coronavirus pandemic. Okay, so we're going to talk some about this as well. You know, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, and they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is why when people try to equate racism with calling people racial epithets and not liking people, that's bigotry. You're confusing what racism is. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. So when we look at stories like this, when we hear from New York Times, NBC News also has a piece on this as well. This story from the New York Times: racism is declared a public health crisis in New York City. The Board of Health passed a resolution directing the health department to work toward a racially just recovery, quote unquote, racially just recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. This piece right here is from Tuesday, October 19, 2021. So we'll talk about this on today's show. And then in the trial of the three white men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery, jury selection continues for a third day. Now, the judge expressed frustration with the slow pace of jury selection. You had some of the protesters outside of the courthouse today in Georgia, in Brunswick. You had some of the protesters who were expressing frustration with how long it's taking to select a jury as well. Now, keep in mind, 1,000 jury duty notification notices went out. They have to go through 600 potential jurors. They have to go through this week, okay, and another 400 next week to get down to 16. To get down to 16 jurors, including 4 alternates. All right, so they have an arduous task, okay, to do this. Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I looked at a number of articles today. I was watching some coverage from the Black News Channel that has excellent coverage, by the way. Roland Martin Unfiltered has great coverage also. But I was watching a lot of the coverage from the Black News Channel, okay, and they have some really good coverage on this. the judge is actually expressed frustration on Tuesday with the pace of jury selection. Now, what is important to note, and this piece here from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution talks about this. I would rather them take 4 weeks to get 16 solid jurors who are impartial, who will not compromise the case in any way to get the verdict overturned. I'd rather for them to take a month and get 16 solid jurors, which includes 4 alternates, than to try to rush to appease some artificial timeline and get jurors who may somehow compromise the case or set it up on appeal to have a guilty verdict overturned. There was one prospective juror who was struck from the jury pool because when he left the courthouse and went outside, he gave a thumbs up to the Ahmaud Arbery family and the supporters outside. The defense attorney saw this, or at least one defense attorney saw this, brought it to the judge's attention, and that prospective juror was dismissed. This is not television. This is serious. I would rather for them to spend 4 weeks and get 16 solid jurors than to try to meet some artificial timeline, try to appeal activists and all this, and then botch the case. And these 3 guys walk. As expected, the court is having a tough time finding prospective jurors who feel they can be impartial in reaching a verdict. After viewing constant news coverage and the widely shared cell phone video of Ahmaud Arbery's death, one after another said their minds are already made up. One after another said their minds are already made up. This is a town of about 16,000 people. This is not Atlanta. This is a very small town. They need to take their time with jury selection. Okay, these three alleged murderers are not going anywhere. As far as I'm concerned, there's no rush to just hurry up and try to get a jury. These guys ain't going anywhere. It's not like they have a plane to catch. So do your due diligence and get 16 solid jurors. We're going to talk about this on today's show also. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for, speaking of love and sex, before the show, I was talking to my friend from a number of years. If you're familiar with the Punani poets, okay, if you're not familiar with the Punani poets, Google them. They're fantastic. Jessica Holter. I've interviewed her a few times on the African History Network show throughout the years. We're going to have her back soon because we were talking and they have some shows coming up. Orlando, I think she said, I think it's going to be Orlando in Valentine's Day, 2022, and another show coming up. So we're going to do either I'll interview her on this show or she'll interview me on her show, or we have a discussion or something. So we said we have to connect very soon on air. Jessica Holter. Okay. I first saw Jessica and the Punani Poets back in about 2003 on Real Sex on HBO. Okay. And then years later, when I started doing radio, we connected and I interviewed her a couple times. So they're pretty interesting. All right. We focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. Uh, Sign up for our email newsletter. Text Kemet, Kemet, the 22828. The sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828. The sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The sign up for our email newsletter there as well. All right, I want to jump into this first story here before we go to break. This deals with racism being declared as a public health issue in the city of New York. Okay, we know the city of New York is the largest city in the country also. There's a good article here from NBC News that deals with this. And also, we're going to go to this clip here from NBC New York also that discusses this as well. Let me flip over and change this title here. All right. So, racism is declared a public health crisis in New York City. The city board of health declared racism a public health issue on Monday, October 18th, 2021, passing a resolution that directed the health department to take steps to ensure a racially just recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the resolution called the resolution called on the department to work with other agencies to root out systemic racism, within policies, plans, and budgets on a wide range of matters that affect health, including land use, transportation, and education. Land use, transportation, and education. Now, it also directed the New York City Health Department to improve data collection practices and examine both the health code and its own history for structural bias. Dr. Dave Chokshi, Chokshi, the department's commissioner, is also one of the 11 medical experts who sit on its boards. At the meeting on Monday, October 18th, Dr. Chokshi noted that the board was founded amid epidemics of yellow fever, cholera, and smallpox in the early 1800s. Advances in sanitation and understanding the links between mental factors and health helped curb those diseases. Dr. Chokshi drew a parallel to the current pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, and its outsized toll on communities of color. He said, quote, "Why do some non-white populations develop severe disease and die from COVID-19 at higher rates than whites? Why do some non-white populations develop severe disease and die from COVID-19 at higher rates than whites?" We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. You can't hear anything. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. You all can't hear me? You should be able to hear. Stand by, back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by, back from break in 4 minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. Back from break in 3 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes.
The African History Network show, we deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Also, be sure to register for the 10-week online courses that I teach on the weekend. On Sunday, it is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Next class is Sunday, October 24th. 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. Click right here and register here. As soon as you register, you can start watching the class we just did last week. And then also the other class I teach on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay, so we go through and analyze approximately a 10-year period of history. Each class, and look at what happened after the Civil War ended and after slavery ended, and understand the laws and policies put in place to put us in the predicament we're in right now, so we understand where we need to go from here. Okay, right before the break, I was talking about this story here from New York Times, and I saw a few stories on this. Racism is declared a public health crisis in New York City. Racism is declared a public health crisis in New York City. The Board of Health passed a resolution directing the health department to work toward a racially just recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Okay, now as we continue here with this piece, and then we're going to go to this clip here from NBC LX. Why do some, Dr. Chokshi, Dr. Dave A. Chokshi, the Department of Health Commissioner in New York City, said, why do some non-white populations develop severe disease and die from COVID-19 at higher rates than whites? Underlying health conditions undoubtedly play a role, but why are there higher rates of hypertension, diabetes, and obesity in communities of color? The answer does not lie in biology. The answer does not lie in biology. Structural and environmental factors such as disinvestment, discrimination, and disinformation. Disinvestment, discrimination, and disinformation underlie a greater burden of these diseases in communities of color. So, and one of the things he's dealing with is how zip code determines your health. Oftentimes is a factor, a major factor in your health and life expectancy, your zip code. He added, quote, the COVID-19 pandemic must render unacceptable that which has been condoned for generations. The COVID-19 pandemic must render unacceptable that which has been condoned for generations. Now, the Department of Health is in New York City is one of the largest public health agencies in the world and one of the oldest in the country. The members of its board, who are appointed by the mayor of New York City with the consent of the city council, serve without pay and oversee the health code. More than 200 similar declarations, more than 200 similar declarations have been made by municipalities, health agencies, and elected officials across the country, according to a database maintained by the American Public Health Association. The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, has also called attention to how racism affects illness rates and life expectancy. But the New York City Health Department said its resolution was one of the first that was tied to specific directives. One of the first that was tied to specific directives. Those include making recommendations to the Mayor's Racial Justice Commission and establishing a data for equity working group designed to ensure the department applies an equity lens to public health data and educates other agencies on how to do the same. The resolution also called on the department to investigate its own role in divesting and underinvesting in critical community-led health programs, divesting and underinvesting in critical community-led health programs. Now, Dr. Michelle Morse, M-O-R-S-E, Chief Medical Officer and Deputy Commissioner at the Health Department, called the resolution's passage, quote, a hopeful milestone, but added that it was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Only one piece of a much larger puzzle. She said that strategies like updating the city's health code and investing in disadvantaged areas were key. Okay, Dr. Michelle Morse said one of the ways that racism is expressed at a policy level is inaction in the face of need. One of the ways that racism is expressed at a policy level is inaction in the face of need. Now, it's important to understand that you have many Republicans who are saying racism does not exist. And you have many Republican state legislatures that are passing laws attacking critical race theory and the teaching and what you can teach about the history of racism and slavery, systemic racism, things like this in schools, and really cracking down on this. And you have many Republicans, whether it's Senator Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina, whether it's Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, many of them are saying racism doesn't exist. Okay, or they'll say systemic racism doesn't exist, but racism is systemic by nature. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. So if we, I want to look at this, if we look at this piece here from NBC New York, and we're going to go to this clip here in just a second here, Shakita. If we look at this piece here from NBC New York, they go through and they show the recommendations. This article is NYC Board of Health declares racism a public health crisis. This is from October 18th, updated October 19th. The board listed a number of actions the health department can take in order to combat racism, including researching and acknowledging the department's role in divesting and underinvesting in community-led health programs and work to reconcile with communities hurt by it. 2, creating, not in any particular order. 2, creating an internal uh, creating an internal data for equity group to ensure the department applies an anti-racism lens to public health data, and using that information to assist other agencies to improve health equity in the city. 3, making health related anti-racism New York City charter revision recommendations to the new mayoral racial justice commission. Making health related anti-racism New York City charter revision recommendations to the new mayoral racial justice commission. 4, collaboration with other agencies to report on fatalities, injuries, and health conditions by race, gender, and other demographics in order to improve data quality and care. And 5, working with appropriate community groups to review the NYC Health Code through an anti-racism lens in order to find any measures that support systemic or structural racism or bias and recommend new ideas to replace them. The health department should also devise on racism within policies, plans, and budgets regarding all things health related, transportation, education, housing, and more, the board said. And 6, reporting twice a year to the board to promote work done related to the resolution and ensure department accountability on progress so far. Okay, the resolution passed by the board and goes into effect immediately. The resolution passed by the board goes into effect immediately. I want to go to this clip here. This is from NBC LX there in New York City area, and they discussed this topic here dealing with racism being made a public health issue, and they also spoke with an African American male doctor, Dr. Ahmaud Charles, who's the host of Heart Over Hype. Dr. Ahmaud Charles speaks on issues of police brutality, police reform, and the impact of COVID-19 on African American communities. Let's go to this clip, Shakita. This is in. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, friends, we are just rolling through this Wednesday. You're watching NBCLX. I'm Tabitha Lipkin, and Joe Beth, you have a really interesting interview for us.
Yeah, that's right. But before we dive into it, I want to provide all of the context. Across the country, local and state leaders are declaring racism a public health crisis or emergency. And according to the American Public Health Association, these are the states that have already declared racism a crisis. This as Black Americans are disproportionately affected by COVID-19. The CDC says that the long-standing systemic health and social inequalities have put many people from racial and ethnic minority groups at increased risk of getting sick and dying from COVID-19. Some experiences are common to many people of color, and social determinants of health have historically prevented them from having fair opportunities for economic, physical, and emotional health. Inequities in the social determinants of health, such as poverty and healthcare access, affects these groups and are interrelated and influence a wide range of health and quality of life outcomes and risks as well. So what does this all mean, and what needs to change? To touch on this, Dr. Ahmaud Charles is joining us now, a former NBC News senior health journalist and host of Heart Over Hype podcast. Dr. Charles, thank you for joining us today. So treating racism as a public health issue, it's not a new idea, but why are we seeing more and more states now coming forward to declare racism a public health crisis?
I think it starts with the coronavirus, to be honest with you, even before issues of police misconduct. The COVID-19 pandemic hit white communities hard, but it really took a vice grip on Black communities, and it still hasn't let up. The disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 virus on Black and Brown communities is not surprising. Black and Brown communities have higher rates of comorbidities and pre-existing health conditions like obesity, heart disease, and kidney disease. Black people are more likely to live in substandard housing. Black and Brown people in this country are more likely to be essential workers. In many senses, that's code for sacrificial. They do work those jobs like the grocery store clerk and bus drivers, and so they are contacted with the disease more often. So they're really put in a precarious position, and they're in constant contact with the virus. But I got to tell you that you can't talk about one part of the problem without the other. Black and Brown continue to be very resilient in this country and continue to fight.
Absolutely. I want to touch on police brutality, police reform. A lot of protests still happening right now are surrounding these issues across the country. So what do you think needs to happen to build on this momentum for social change?
I think the first thing that we can do is to vote. I think voting November 3rd is critically important. But there are also things that we can do now. One of the things that I think that we've all heard in the news is defunding the police. But I think that there's a misnomer there. I think what we mean is divesting. And by divesting, we mean reinvesting in our communities, making sure that the communities are part of the policing process. I know that there are also conversations that are being had in Black and Brown communities about how to interact with the police officers and how to become more involved in equity work that involves the police community and that's not outside of police communities. And then I think that the last thing is just true allyship. I think that personal allyship bleeds into corporate allyship. It bleeds into allyship within our communities and with the police. And I think that allyship means that we are active participants in thinking about issues that critically impact not just ourselves, but other communities. So those are some of the things that we can do, but we have a long way to go. But I definitely think that allyship is a great starting point.
A long way to go indeed. So racism, a public health crisis. So how can officials better take on these issues, specifically public health officials? And then what is a long-term solution for this health inequity?
Well, for one, public health officials actually have to care. Many public health officials have benefited greatly from structural racism. And so it's hard for you to care about an issue that, quite frankly, doesn't really impact you. But what we've seen with the coronavirus pandemic and systemic racism in the form of police misconduct is that when it is systemic racism in the form of police misconduct is that when it affects one arm of the United States, it really affects all of us. And it affects not just our bottom line, but it affects that social capital is very important in this country and that this movement of anti-racism is here and it's here to stay. In terms of long-term solutions, I think that we have to get out to the polls and vote. We have to vote people who will actually invest in our communities and who will put dispelling health inequities on their agenda. And we got to hold them accountable. We can't just give our vote away. This is the most important election because it's the next election. But local and state elections are just as important as the national election. And we got to make our vote count. We got to vote together. We got to vote wisely because, quite frankly, our lives depend on it.
For sure. And less than 2 months away, not 2 weeks, but 2 months away from November 3rd. Very important day. Dr. Ahmaud Charles, thank you for your time. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Pause it right there. Okay. That's from NBC LX out of New York. And they have a big election in New York City for mayor also in November. We have a big election here in Detroit for mayor as well in November also. So read this article here from NBC New York. NYC Board of Health declares racism a public health crisis. NYC Board of Health declares racism a public health crisis. In particular, the board noted the impact that racism had on health throughout the pandemic. So now NBC News also has an article on this as well that I read. This is the piece here from that was NBC New York. This is actually NBC News. Racism declared a New York City public health crisis. And one of the things they talk about in here on page 2 of the article is the American Public Health Association reported that from 2019 to October 2020, about 70 cities, 3 dozen counties, and 3 states declared racism a public health crisis. So we're seeing this spread across the country. The American Public Health Association reported from 2019 to October 2020, about 70 cities, 3 dozen counties, and 3 states declared racism a public health crisis. Kansas City, Missouri, and Indianapolis used their declarations to determine how to dispense public funding. The mayor of Holyoke, Massachusetts, a predominantly white community of about 40,000 residents, used a declaration to make Juneteenth a paid city employee holiday. The Minnesota House passed a resolution vowing to actively participate in the dismantling of racism. The Minnesota House Minnesota State House of Representatives passed a resolution vowing to actively participate in the dismantling of racism. A study this month, October 2021, led by researchers with the National Cancer Institute, concluded COVID-19 killed a disproportionate number of African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans in 2020 and exacerbated health disparities among the groups. So what we're seeing is the structural inequities that coronavirus has exposed is causing in certain cities people to focus on it more and take action and declare racism a public health crisis. In April of 2021, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention called racism a serious threat to public health, becoming the largest U.S.-based health agency to single out racism as having a, quote, profound and negative impact on communities of color, end quote, and contributing to disproportionate mortality rates. All right. So read this one here from NBC News. Racism declared a New York City public health crisis. All right. I want to switch gears here and do an update here in the jury selection in the trial of the 3 white men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery. Okay, so if we look at this piece, I was reading some articles on this, been following this. It was since the video went viral in May 2020, but especially paying close attention to what's been happening this week with the trial. And today is day 3 of jury selection. Okay, so we see that one, race is playing an issue in the jury selection. Now, the judge is frustrated with the slow pace of jury selection. We have to keep in mind this week they were tasked with going through about 600 prospective jurors. Next week, they're going to go through about 400 prospective jurors. They have to get down to 16 jurors, including 4 alternate jurors. Now, The Intercept.com, I was reading articles from The Intercept today, ABC News, New York Times, all this on the trial. Defense attorneys in trial for Ahmaud Arbery's murder quiz jury pool on racism. Okay, we're going to go to clip. We're going to go to clip 2, Shakita, here in just a second from the Black News Channel. We'll go to that here in just a second. Candace Kelly gave some excellent legal analysis today on Start Your Day on the Black News Channel. So, defense attorneys in trial for Ahmaud Arbery's murder quiz jury pool on racism. Given the racial Rorschach test that is the Arbery death, how do you find jurors can lay aside their impressions of the case? Okay, now they're having in Atlanta Journal-Constitution has a good article on this also that we just showed you. If we look at this here quickly, questions like, do you believe that anyone who opposes the Black Lives Matter movement is a racist? Is the Confederate flag a symbol of racism? The legal team defending the trio of white men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery last year in South Georgia would like to know how potential jurors answer these questions. Jury selection began Monday, October 18th, in an effort to choose 12 jurors and 4 alternates out of 100 people in Glenn County called to serve. The county court commandeered a Brunswick, Georgia Recreation Center to begin screening potential jurors, shuttling them in batches of 20 to the courthouse. The process is excruciatingly slow, leading Superior Court Judge Timothy Walmsley to complain about how long he can hold people while defense attorneys and the prosecution pore over the answers to their questions from prospective jurors. 12 of the first 20 potential jurors were dismissed. 12 of the first 20 potential jurors were dismissed for cause, while 5 of the second 20 have so far been dismissed, with more intensive questioning to come. Now, I want to go to this piece here from, I want to go to this clip here from the Black News Channel. This is from October 20th, 2020. Arbery jury selection, Black Lives Matter, a threshold of racial opinion. You're going to hear Candace Kelly, legal analyst for the Black News Channel. Candace and I are sometimes co-panelists on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
So heartbroken. Justice correspondent Candace Kelly joins us now. Good morning once again, Candace. The judge flustered yesterday, perhaps that's the right word for it, that already jury selection is behind schedule. They have a lot of people to get through to interview to seat this jury. Why is it going so slow?
Well, listen, at the beginning of the jury selection process, when we look at Monday, there were a lot of questions that were asked by prosecutors and defense attorneys as to what questions they could ask at all. For example, the defense wanted to ask all of the jurors about how they felt about Black Lives Matter. Prosecution said, what does this have to do with the case? But it seems that this Black Lives Matter has become a threshold as to what people think about race, and this is not all-encompassing. What does Black Lives Matter have to do with this case? There were questions about the death penalty, whether or not that should be brought up to tell the jurors that this is not a death penalty case. The defense said, we don't even want the word death penalty to come up. So at the beginning of Monday, there were a whole lot of questions that had to be sorted through. And yesterday, there were a lot of questions that had to be sorted through to figure out what can we even ask these potential jurors. So that got them a little behind.
Yeah, but Candace, it's just a follow-up because, you've taught us a lot with your legal mind. Why wouldn't this have been decided, back and forth filings before all this? Why did it have to be just
decided yesterday with people trying to move through the process.
You're exactly right. And, a lot of this has to do with logistics and scheduling. This was a 3-page questionnaire. Normally questionnaires are a little longer, but this was just a matter of things that came up to attorneys at the time. And once you open up that door, when one attorney has a question, well, then another is going to have a question. And they battled that out for a pretty long time on Monday.
Yeah, but so far, 8 people we've learned will move forward to the individual questioning phase. What does that mean?
What it means is that these 8 people are now going to go to a part of the questioning process that we just are not going to be privy to. Even in the Derek Chauvin case, we heard the one-on-one questioning. We got a sense of what these potential jurors sounded like. Didn't know what they looked like, but what did they sound like? What was their demeanor? We are not going to be able to see any of this in this situation. And I think that does make a difference because of the fact that we out in the public are not necessarily casting our judgment about what we think is going to be one way or the other based upon a person's race or their occupation. All that speculation is removed, and that is exactly what the judge wants. Keep these jurors as anonymous as possible, and that's what's going to happen next. One-on-one questioning in total and complete privacy, Sharon.
And we saw that, and we're journalists, Candace, so I don't necessarily prefer that. Obviously, I want to know as much as I can.
Absolutely.
Deciding this case.
Okay.
I think, from
Keep going.
from Travis McMichael, they have said that if they believe what's going on outside of the courtroom interferes with what's going on in it, they're going to want some changes. What exactly do they want?
Listen, at any time, attorneys have the opportunity to say, listen, we want to change the location of this case. Now, they haven't asked for that as of yet. But what's going on the outside of the courtroom really affects what's going on the inside. At this point, there are no large police barricades like in the Chauvin trial. There's no National Guard, huge presence, and things of that nature that make the local community feel like this is a police state. And that's very important because as these defendants are walked into the courtroom, if at any point there was the opportunity for them to feel like they were threatened or intimidated, then this would open up the door for attorneys to say, listen, I want to change the location because I don't like what's going on outside. So I think that it was a very good move and an interesting move that the local police said, listen, we've got this under control. And it's good because then that means that more than likely it won't interfere with what's going on inside. Peaceful rallies have been planned for the next couple of weeks. And so that can't be the blame necessarily if they do change the location. And often what goes on the outside will compel an attorney to change the location.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, we're almost out of time, but Dre Clark told us yesterday he's not seeing counter demonstrations. Right now, the only demonstrations that are being seen are in support of the Arbery family, in support of justice for Ahmaud Arbery, convicting these men. Is the defense the only side, though, if there were to be counter demonstrations? The defense is the only one that could move for a change of venue, Candace, or could the prosecution do it?
Both sides could actually do it. And you're right, there has been no counter demonstrations. And in fact, the police that have come out to support these ralliers are saying we're supporting their First Amendment right. That's how they've couched it, to make sure that nothing goes awry. And there's not this pitting of other people together. But as you said, there's only one side so far. So that's where we are right now. But to answer your question, either side can ask for a change of location.
Okay, excellent analysis there by my girl Candace Kelly on the Black News Channel. Name of that clip is Arbery Jury Selection, Black Lives Matter, a Threshold of Racial Opinion, from October 20th, 2021. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a couple more minutes because I want to talk about this piece here from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Jury selection drags on an Arbery murder trial. Once again, as I said, I'm not in any rush for them to pick a jury. They estimated 2 weeks to pick a jury. They have to go through 1,000 potential jurors. If they took 4 weeks and got 16 solid jurors, including 4 alternates, I'll be fine, as opposed to trying to rush it and screw things up. Okay. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Remember, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over until we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by. Okay, keep watching. Okay, we're going to keep going. I just want to deal with this other article, then we have to get out of here. Okay, so this piece here from Atlanta Journal-Constitution, we talked about it a few minutes ago briefly. It's a very good article. Jury selection drags on. Which one is right here? Jury selection drags on an Arbery murder trial. Okay, I'm not concerned about it dragging on anything. No, you take your time and you get the right jurors. You get solid jurors who can put aside what they know about the trial and be impartial, because this is too easy to screw this up. As expected, this is the third day of jury selection. Okay, as expected, the court is having a tough time finding prospective jurors who feel they can be impartial in reaching a verdict after viewing constant news coverage and the widely shared cell phone video of Ahmaud Arbery's death. One after another said their minds are already made up. This is one of the reasons why it's taking longer than expected to go through these 600 jurors this week, prospective jurors this week, because they have another 400 they have to go through next week. Travis McMichael, who fired the fatal shotgun blast, his father, Greg McMichael, and neighbor William Roddy Bryan, who filmed Ahmaud Arbery's killing, are charged with murder, false imprisonment, and other crimes in the February 23rd, 2020 killing of Ahmaud Arbery. They are strongly contesting the charges. Now, if we look at this here quickly, one man was quickly dismissed Wednesday morning after telling the court he believes all three defendants are guilty. One prospective juror was quickly dismissed on Wednesday morning after telling the court he believes all three defendants are guilty. Juror number 138 said Ahmaud Arbery was minding his own business while out for a jog when he got interrupted by the McMichaels and Bryan, who pursued Ahmaud Arbery through their Satilla Shores subdivision in pickup trucks. The defendants contend that they were trying to make a citizen's arrest because they suspected Ahmaud Arbery had been involved in a string of neighborhood break-ins. The juror said he had seen video of the shooting 6 times on the news and believed William Roddy Bryan's cell phone footage told the entire story of what happened. On his questionnaire, he apparently wrote, because there's a questionnaire that they're given of a number of questions to weed out potential jurors who can't be impartial. After they made the first cut, now these 8 people who they so far selected go to the next step for another set of questions that we don't get to see. On his questionnaire, he apparently wrote, "Guilty, they killed him. Guilty, they killed him." According to Frank Hogg, one of the 2 attorneys representing Greg McMichael, one of the defendants. The juror also told the court he would not consider a self-defense argument if one were presented at trial. I don't know where the hell they got some of these people from. I'm just be honest with, oh my, just be honest with, I don't know where the hell they got some of these people from. Okay. He was then pressed, juror number 138 was then pressed by William Roddy Bryan's attorney, Kevin Gile, on whether he believed William Roddy Bryan was also responsible for Ahmaud Arbery's death. Quote, "They did it as a team," the man replied. The prospective juror was struck with cause after defense attorney said he gave a thumbs up to Ahmaud Arbery's father, who was seated in the courtroom during individual questioning. What the hell are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? I don't understand this. After lunch, another man told the court it bothered him that McMichaels and Bryan were not charged immediately. Quote, "It was a horrible event. I've seen the video. I'm very familiar with the," end quote, juror number 150 told prosecutors. "I can't be an impartial juror, no way." When Superior Court Judge Timothy Walmsley, Walmsley, asked Wednesday's panel of 19 prospective jurors if they had already formed or expressed opinions about the guilt or innocence of the men on trial, nearly a dozen raised their hands. Ahmaud Arbery's killing sparked mass protests against the backdrop of last year's social justice movement, and many summoned for jury duty said they fear there could be repercussions after a verdict is reached. First of all, I hope you can get 16 jurors who can be impartial. First of all, I hope you can get 16 jurors who can be impartial. One potential juror said he is afraid only one verdict would be acceptable in today's climate. Quote, "The jury is in a tough spot once they're convened," said juror number 152, who didn't believe he could be impartial and said he harbored negative opinions of the defendants. I don't know where they get some of these people from. God damn. See, this is why I say we need to understand the law. And we need to understand it better than they do, because if they can't get 16 impartial jurors, this is going to be a real problem. And some of this stuff, giving the thumbs up to the father, and what the hell y'all doing? Quote, I think what they did was unwarranted and they're guilty," he said. "It would be difficult to change my mind. Maybe my approach is, I used to want to, when I first enrolled at Wayne State University in fall of 1989, I enrolled as a pre-law major because I wanted to be an attorney. I took basic law in high school. It's a class offered in high school, and in business school, we had to take business law. These are just crazy statements that they're making, and it's like jurors need to be impartial and go based upon the evidence, not what they think happened, but based upon evidence presented in the trial. Jurors have to be impartial, one. Two, they have to go based upon evidence presented in the trial, because overwhelmingly most of these trials, if not all of them, there's additional evidence that comes out in the trial that is not on social media prior to the trial, that is not in the mainstream media prior to the trial. It could cause you to convict or cause you to acquit. You have to go based upon the evidence presented in the trial, not what you saw on social media. To give you an example of this, in the trial of Derek Chauvin, nowhere in the trial did they discuss that George Floyd worked at a nightclub that Derek Chauvin worked at, because there was information that came out prior to the trial, a year before the trial, that they worked at the same club, they bumped heads, things like this. But that didn't come up in the trial. That wasn't presented as evidence in the trial. It may have been that the prosecutors investigated that and couldn't corroborate the information, came up with a dead end, or it was something that wasn't helpful. So that was not a line, that was not a theory or anything that the prosecution followed or introduced as evidence in the trial. There was surveillance footage at the Cup Foods convenience store showing George Floyd in the store the day that he was killed. And this was footage that we had not seen before, had not heard of before. And it showed George Floyd doing his transaction there, getting whatever he was going to get, buying whatever he's going to buy. And he stays in the store for a number of minutes after he does the transaction. We had not seen that footage before the trial. Any of these trials, and somebody's done radio 11 years and covered numerous trials, there's always information and details that come out in the trial that is not out in the media, that's not on social media. So you have to operate based upon the evidence was presented in the trial and convict or acquit based upon the evidence presented in the trial, not what's on social media, not what you heard at the barbershop or the hair salon. So I don't know where they got some of these people from. Some of the potential jurors had access to court records posted to the Glenn County Superior Court website, along with instructions telling them where and when to report. Now, we talked about this on yesterday's show. Vice.com had a story about this, where Ahmaud Arbery's mental health records were mistakenly posted on the court website. We talked about this on yesterday's show. The day on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Roland talked about this, and we talked about this yesterday. Yahoo News also picked up this story as well. If we look at this, revisit this story from yesterday, from our Tuesday show. Court mistakenly gave potential jurors access to Ahmaud Arbery's mental health history. Court mistakenly gave potential jurors access to Ahmaud Arbery's mental health history. We talked about this on Tuesday. The Glenn County Superior Court website gave potential jurors access to suppressed evidence in the murder trial of Ahmaud Arbery's killers. This is from October 19th, 2021. Has mistakenly exposed potential jurors to suppressed evidence including his mental health history, which a judge banned from trial. Now, it's not clear how many potential jurors saw this information. Jury candidates who visit the Glenn County Superior Court website seeking information about what time and what day they need to show up can view in just a couple of clicks, all the motions filed so far in the murder trial of Travis and Gregory McMichael and William Roddy Bryan. Those documents include specifics about Ahmaud Arbery's mental health and prior criminal history that the judge ordered suppressed and never brought up in court. The motions also include evidence that prosecutors would like to use against the McMichaels, including a Confederate flag vanity plate on Travis McMichael's truck, the son, and how often the father and son used their licensed firearms. The judge has yet to make a ruling on the admissibility of that evidence. Now, if a jury candidate were to read that information, it would make them ineligible to sit on the jury that would determine the McMichaels and William Roddy Bryan's fates. And if that person were to be chosen for the jury, it could be grounds for a mistrial, although that's unlikely, legal experts told Vice News. Now, that information was also taken down off of the website. The oversight further complicates an already challenging jury selection process with an unprecedented 1,000 candidates, more than 10 times the number normally asked. The SIA media coverage regarding the trial and near daily protests over the treatment of African Americans in a system plagued by racism also makes picking an impartial jury a monumental task. Glenn County told Vice News that the court is aware of the links and a solution is in the works. We are aware of that issue, and the decision about that will be made by the judge, Glenn County Court Superior Court, by the judge, Glenn County Superior Court Clerk Ronald Adam told Vice News Tuesday morning, October 19th. Let me see here. Okay, 3 minutes. Okay. Read the rest of this here. That's just a recap of some of what we talked about on Tuesday's show, because they referenced it here. Now, just to go back to this. Okay, some of the potential jurors had access to court records posted to the Glenn County Superior Court website, along with instructions telling them where and when to report. Those filings included information that Judge Walmsley ruled inadmissible, including records showing Ahmaud Arbery's previous brushes with the law and his mental health diagnosis. Attorneys brought up the issue Tuesday afternoon, and the links have since been removed from that section of the website. Attorneys brought up the issue Tuesday afternoon, and the links have since been removed from that section of the website. So far, 3 prospective jurors said they clicked on the links and read the court filings. Throughout the day, one person after another said their minds were already made up. Congratulations, you're dismissed. One woman who said she attended high school with Arbery's father discussed the widely shared cell phone video during questioning. Quote, "I thought they railroaded him," said juror number 164. Quote, "It was almost like a lynching to me. They just wanted to hang him," end quote. Okay, you can go home. Just one person, juror number 175, says she believes Travis McMichael acted in self-defense when he fired the shotgun 3 times. Just one person, juror number 175, says she believes Travis McMichael acted in self-defense when he fired the shotgun 3 times against an unarmed man that's running for his life. It's self-defense, okay? Unfortunately for the defense, the woman said her lease is up and she plans to move out of state this weekend. Now, when court adjourned on Wednesday, October 20th, a total of 15 prospective jurors had been qualified to sit in the final pool following 3 days of questioning. Okay, because they started out like early today, they started out with 8. They got 8 on total, 8 on Tuesday, prospective jurors. Now they have 15. A total of 15 prospective jurors. When court adjourned on Wednesday, a total of 15 prospective jurors had been qualified to sit in the final pool following 3 days of questioning. Attorneys say they need 64 prospective jurors before the prosecution and defense exercise their strikes to arrive at 12 jurors and 4 alternates. So they have a ways to go. Okay. Jury selection resumes on Thursday at 8:30 a.m. They have a ways to go. We'll talk about this more on tomorrow's show. This is real court. This isn't like crime dramas or court dramas on TV. You know, this isn't LA Law or The Practice, or this isn't any of those court drama shows. This is like real. This is like real life. This isn't any CSI shows or anything like that. Okay, look, we had to get out of here. Be sure to register for the 10-week online course I teach on Saturdays and Sundays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And we do this one here on Saturdays. And I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, and we deal with what happened after slavery ended. What were the laws and policies put in place to oppress African Americans? We look at some of our successes as well, and how we got into the predicament we're in today, how we got where we are today, to better understand where we need to go from here. Okay, so this class is on sale, $70, regularly $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime as soon as you register. You can watch the class from last week. So we'll post a link here. And this is also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And then the other class that I teach is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. And we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We also deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. This is at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, be sure to email me at TheAHNShow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNShow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we can do a virtual presentation or an in-person presentation. We know African American History Month is coming up in February, Dr. King Day in January, Kwanzaa in December. I also have extensive presentation dealing with the origins of Christmas as well. Okay, so email me at AHNShow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and be sure and sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter as well. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's corrects wrong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.